I think we view software websites is far too throwaway. And as a developer, it's super, super, super fun to build new stuff. We all love doing that. It's exciting. But content teams don't love transcribing all their content from one format to another. That's no fun for them. And, marketing and brand teams like the opportunity to refresh, but there's a cost to the business. There's an overhead and a cost for doing all of that work. So, we want to be trying to build stuff that benefits planet and businesses that last.
This episode is brought to you by Freemius. If you're stuck growing your WordPress product business, it's time to level up to Freemius. Freemius is a complete platform for WordPress product owners to sell, grow, and build a completely sustainable software business. You probably already know how competitive the WordPress ecosystem is these days. Building it and waiting for your customer is not an option. Freemius knows how hard it is for WordPress product founders to grow their business. They've developed the tools, the software, and most importantly, the content plus the community to help you get more sales. With a team of monetization experts, you're picking Freemius for success, not just for your product license keys and updates. If you need help growing your WordPress business, visit freemius.com. That's freemius.com. Thanks for supporting the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Matt Report podcast. Special guest today, Hannah Smith. Hannah, welcome to the program.
Hello, Matt. Thanks for having me. It's very kind of you to invite me on to come and chat.
You know what I forgot to put in my notes? What your title is. What you wanted me to say your title. CEO, president, freelance, genius. I don't know what you tell us what your title is.
I'm president of Hannah Smith Incorporated. No, I'm a freelance WordPress developer is generally how I introduce myself. And depending on who the audience is, I might also tell them I'm a sustainable web consultant as well.
And at family holiday parties, you never tell anyone that you can fix a printer or anything about code or anything like that.
Oh my God. Exactly. I went to the framing shop to get some pictures framed yesterday and we were chatting and I said I'm a web developer and they were like, oh, can you fix our WordPress site? We'll do all your framing for free. And I was like, oh God.
Trust me, I've been remodeling our bathrooms in our house, or not myself, but I've hired contractors, and all of the contractors that walk through could use, one, a website, because there's a handful of them that don't, and two, the ones that do have websites, they're from like 1999. They severely need to be updated, but I guess in today's climate, they don't really need it, though we're looking at a lot of market pressures lately where we don't really know where the market's going. And that's where I want to kind of kick things off. As a freelancer, the news, the big headlines is costs are going up, inflation here in the U.S. anyway, so much pressure on the markets, question mark. What about you as a freelancer? Have you started to hear any, pullback from your own clients on budget or projects or scale or anything like that?
Oh, it's a really good question. I mean, you can probably tell from my accent, I'm in the UK. We have cost of living increases here. No, I mean, at the moment, I would say the demand for my skills from my current clients is the same. And I mean, I get a lot of inquiries, and I definitely say since the pandemic started, two or so years ago, I'd say that has increased and steadily increased, even, now.
Has there been a demand more for e-commerce that you've seen people knocking on your door saying, hey, we need to set up shop online, or are we talking like more marketing sites, that kind of thing?
So I'd say definitely through the pandemic, what I saw was more e-commerce. I also saw a lot of people go, oh, I've suddenly got time for this side project or this pet. And I got a lot of requests for that kind of stuff. More recently, I'd say I think the whole market is suffering from finding good, experienced freelancers. So I'd say at the moment, probably since Christmas, since the pandemic has eased off, certainly here in the UK, I'd say that it's general business, general SMEs wanting to do their marketing sites.
From the perspective of WordPress, the evolution of WordPress over the last couple of years, Gutenberg has certainly gotten better. It's debatable, I know, in some crowds. How has that landed with you and your clients? Are we at a point now where, you're like, hey, client, go ahead and, start modifying blocks and layouts with Gutenberg? How has that settled with you and your clients and how you approach building sites?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an advocate for Gutenberg. I like it. I wasn't too sure about it the very first time I played with it, but as you rightly point out, it's improved massively. And I think it's a good tool. And I certainly think it's a massive step up from building ACF heavy layouts or even perhaps using some of the more proprietary page builders. So I'm a huge fan of Gutenberg. I've also done a full site editing site and released that into production. It's a relatively simple marketing site, but I like the direction it's going in, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's good.
I'm moderately happy with like where it goes, where it's going. I still struggle to drag and drop blocks within columns. That really frustrates me. FSE, full site editing, of course, is still early days. We hope to make that better. With the theme that you've deployed for customers, do you give them the keys and the access, or do you really lock it down so they don't break anything?
So the particular client that I launched my e-site with, she's a designer, and we've worked together for quite a few years. So she does the design and the content for the client themselves. So she's a trusted party, technical, and so she does need help. She's not going to do anything mad, and she also knows how to use a staging site as well. So, I say to her, something new, test it on the staging site, see how you get on. If you've got problems, give me a shout, and I'm happy to help. So in this one instance, I've given her the keys to the kingdom, and so far so good.
Nice. There's, I'm not a developer, but I've worked with developers for over 20 years at this point, and they are very much like, let me just write the code myself. I'll do it. I don't need a page builder. I don't need Gutenberg. I don't need Elementor. I don't need any of that stuff. I'll write the theme files. A lot of this comes down to, their preferred process, but also speed and performance. Later on in this interview, I do want to talk about speed and performance because you have an eye and an ear and a desire for sustainability with web development and web services. Let's just talk about speed for a moment. That may bring us into sustainability and how that affects everything. Gutenberg, full site editing, performance-wise, have you seen anything different when it loads sites? I mean, everything I see on the web, everybody says it loads pretty fast. Is there any kind of efficiency gap with Gutenberg or full site?
I think the thing that frustrates me most about Gutenberg is the lack of image source set output. That's my massive performance bugbear. But in terms of sort of the amount of CSS, it doesn't really load a lot of JavaScript on the front end, but the CSS, I'm pretty happy with it. It's a pretty small file. And I think in terms of the time and effort it would take for a dev to set up these kinds of systems versus, what the client can do for themselves, I think it's, on balance, a good performing tool. Yeah. I think, if you're aiming for your 100 out of 100 on Lighthouse, you're probably going to want to optimize a little bit of it. But
you probably just want to use a static HTML file. You'll never get it.
You can, but it's tough.
Yeah.
And it's diminishing returns. But if you're looking for a solid 70 or 80, I think Gutenberg's really quite good, as long as you pay attention to your images and don't go nuts with video.
Yeah, because over the course of the many years with the rise of page builders, be it Elementor, Beaver Builder, Site Origin, Divi, Visual Composer, like if we think back to the many years that we've been using these tools to build WordPress sites, the typical response is, I don't need all that bloated stuff. I don't need all that extra code. I don't need 1,000 Google fonts loaded or JavaScript files. All this stuff that comes with the ease of use, but now it's this technical debt that layers on top of an Elementor or whatever. And I'm not saying that they're bad anymore. I'm just saying that was the running, point your finger at these tools. We don't want to use this. You and I, we spoke in our pre-interview about sustainability and efficiency of websites. And I think we joked at one point, like, if WebP went into WordPress core, suddenly servers around the world would have to render all these files and squish them and compress them and do all this stuff. We'd have this massive spike of CPU usage. but then it would dip, and then we'd have a more efficient running websites. Talk to us about sustainability and how you see that play out in WordPress.
It's an interesting one. I mean, I think it depends what definition of sustainability you're using. And that can be, it can mean really different things to different people. The way I view sustainability is basically ensuring that you're meeting today's needs while not taking away from someone in the future. And I think you can also play that backwards and say you're also not, what's the word, disadvantaging people that did things 7 or 8 years ago and forcing them to change their ways. So a lot of that comes down to backwards compatibility with WordPress. It's one of the big ticket items when you're talking about sustainability. Make it clear, it's not everything, but it's a big ticket item for it. And I think, I really applaud the WordPress community for the way it thinks about past users and the way it thinks about backwards compatibility. There is a tension. You see, the WebP one was a good one. I don't think that's going to go into core now. I think they realized actually there's so many implications for this. We're not going to go there. I really applaud the WordPress community for the amount of time and effort it thinks about backwards compatibility. I love that. And I think in that respect, WordPress does quite well. And, I can point my finger at a number of WordPress sites that were built by other people 7 or 8 years ago that I manage and maintain today, and they still work. They're not beautiful, but they do work, and they do the job for people. And I love that about WordPress. I think that's brilliant.
There's a sticking point. I think there's some folks who are like, oh, God, why do we have to continue to use, I don't know, whatever, X, Y, Z, or why do we have to continue to support this? Why is Hello Dolly still loaded in every website? No, I don't even know if it is anymore. Is it still there? I'm not really sure. It's been a while since I've installed a fresh install of WordPress myself. There's all of these things, but it does, sort of aid to, the growth of WordPress, like we're talking about here, sustainability of, caring for who's next in line. Something that I think a lot of people forget in the freelance world when they're dealing with clients and they're like proposing to bigger businesses. This website isn't just for the now. I think when big businesses or even medium-sized businesses come to you, they come to you for, hey, we're buying this website now, but we're like looking at this for like 3, 4, 5 years. This isn't something that we're, just going to flip next year and just do it all over again like a freelancer might do. This is for impacting the brand or the organization for many years and many people across that spectrum. There was no question. There was just a soapbox moment of like
No, but that's cool. I'm on that soapbox with you. I think we view software websites as far too throwaway. And as a developer, it's super, super, super fun to build new stuff. We all love doing that. It's exciting. But content teams don't love transcribing all their content from one format to another. That's no fun for them. And, marketing and brand teams like the opportunity to refresh, but there's a cost to the business. There's an overhead and a cost for doing all of that work. So, we want to be trying to build stuff that benefits planet and businesses that last, I think.
At the bottom of your website, I'm going to spell out your website domain. How do you say it? Is it opcan? Is that how you say it?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure it wasn't opcan. Opcan.co.uk, opcan.co.uk. If you want to check out Hannah's website, at the bottom of the website, I can click a link that says emissions. Check my site. I can basically check the emissions of your website. It says, hurrah! This website or web page is cleaner than 86% of the web. Only 0.19 grams of CO2 is produced every time someone visits this web page. Talk about sustainability in that sense. Is there even a measurable way to say, like, does anyone ever come to you and say, I want to have 0.18 grams of CO2 with my website? Can you build it that way? Is there even a way to measure that, or how do you approach this environmental side of it?
Yeah, so we're getting onto the environmental side, and a lot of people, coming back to my earlier point about how you determine what sustainability means to you. So a lot of people, what we're about to talk to, that's what sustainability means. And as we know, digital tech uses energy or electricity to run. To turn it on, for us to load something or create something, we're using electricity. And a really easy way of measuring how much a website or a digital application is doing, you can basically measure it through the proxy of how much data you're sending from A to B. And that can be a really simple proxy. So if you load a website and it's 8 megabytes, that would be bad day. But that's going to burn significantly more energy than a website that's, say, loading in 1 meg, half a meg, if you're really fine tuning stuff. So, the really easy way of measuring is looking at how much data you're sending over the wire to make a page load. And yes, I do get clients coming to me saying, can we build a client-friendly website? And I'm like, yeah, but can you design a client-friendly website? And a lot of the weight will come from the design and the functionality. As a developer, I can make it performant, of course, but I can't make an autoplay video performant. There is nothing I can do to help you in that circumstance. Yeah. And if you want, 5 full width images on your page, there's also not only going to be so much I can do to help you. Lazy load it, compress it, but that's still going to be a significant file size. So somebody that wants a low carbon website, which is how people talk about it, is basically asking for a performant website or a website that's loading with a small amount of data. And it's got to be a collaborative effort. Yeah. Can't wave a magic dev wand and go, you've got to think about your content and your design.
And I'd imagine that's particularly challenging with, let's say, e-commerce sites, because if you just think of your standard product page, I know everyone says sliders are dead, but they're not for e-commerce, because I feel like every time I go to buy something, I'm sliding through it. I'm like, boy, sliders are not dead. And not for me. Looking at a new pair of Nikes the other day, and I'm like going through all these photos, and I was like, wow, I'm just thinking about all the how sliders still important. But anyway, the point is, e-commerce, not only do you have a lot of images, data, you have the e-commerce functionality. Lots of these sites are jam-packing this stuff with trackers, JavaScript, analytics tools. If you use Brave browser like I do, I'll go to a Nike site, and like the little Brave icon will say 32 trackers blocked. And I'm like, Jesus, what are you guys doing? And that must be particularly challenging in the e-commerce world. Do you have any clients that you work with e-commerce wise that think, hey, we want to sell stuff, but be good to the earth too? Or do you know any movements like that in our space?
Yeah, so I'd say that the movements in that space, I'm not working with any e-commerce clients at the moment. I do have clients that their marketing sites are for sale, and they form a soft, like a funnel for selling software. So I have a couple of clients that do that. And yes, analytics, oh my gosh, it's a constant tension all the time. They want to track, they want to know what's going on. And I'm like, how often are you using this data? Are you even looking at it? Is it telling you anything new or useful? Can we turn it off, please? So what I tend to say to people is, turn your analytics data on for a short time. Say you want to check something, turn it on for a month, 3 weeks. Your data, and then turn it off again until you actually have a question that you need to answer. And that requires people, A, to plan ahead, and B, slow down a little bit, which is an interesting tension, especially in the tech world where we want everything now. Yeah. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm getting on my soapbox. You asked me about trends within e-commerce.
Anyone focusing on sustainability. I know there's a lot of people going crypto in e-commerce, which is not saving the planet. So is there anyone doing saving the planet yet trying to sell products?
Well, it's an interesting one. I have views on this. So what a lot of e-commerce companies are doing are selling or planting trees when people buy things. And essentially what that's doing is offsetting emissions. And offsets can be a bit of a tricky area.
You're stealing my next question. I was going to ask you about that.
Do you want to ask me the question?
I was just going to say, do you have any thoughts on carbon offset?
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I have lots of them. The thing with carbon offsets is that they're basically, you are paying to offload your emissions onto somebody else. And the problem is that where we are with climate change, we can't afford to be doing that any longer. We have to actually ourselves be making reductions. So offsets are kind of offloading a problem onto someone else. And if that's all that somebody's doing and they're claiming to be green, I would ask them some more questions, really. I think that's dangerously it's getting into the territory of greenwashing. And sometimes that can be intentional. Sometimes that can be just honestly through a lack of awareness and a lack of knowledge about other things that you can do. But either way, it's still potentially greenwashing. So if an e-commerce site, the only thing they're doing is offset, I'm not comfortable with that. But if they're doing things like donating some of their profits to charity, if they are running social schemes such as to build up skills in other areas, if they're bringing interns in, to train people up, if they're looking at their fulfillment processes, if they're looking at their production processes, if they're looking at their recycling practices, that's a bit more about sustainability. And of course, if they're thinking about performance sites, right. I mean, you do get quite a lot of sites that talk about how green they are. Yeah. Or companies that talk about how green they are. And then you run that site through a carbon checker. And okay, they need some education here.
I glossed over the fact that when we were talking about WebP, if people don't know, servers have electricity, servers that host your website, there's electricity, there's processors, there's memory, there's storage, there's networks, there's all of this stuff being burned every time the CPU cycles, right? Every time you click something, there's a little bit extra burned in the earth. Well, that's kind of drastic, but there's a little bit of energy burned throughout.
It is true.
Right,
yeah,
it's true.
I think it's fair to say that. Yeah.
Are there web hosting companies or I guess cloud hosting companies that have a focus on limiting the impact or guides to say this is the most efficient way to code to not use so much CPU or bandwidth?
Yeah, so this is interesting. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can look at it. Yes, there are. There's an increasing amount of guidance out there for coding performantly or optimizing your code. And, it's not a new thing to do that. That's a school of thought and a kind of sub-industry that's been around for a long time. What is new and what is emerging that's different is green software engineering or sustainable software engineering. And that's a little more holistic. So that's kind of looking more at things like, if you've got server load, when can you get that server to, compute its load? So say, for example, with analytics, there's a lot of processing going on to summarize your data, etc. What green software engineering is looking at doing is saying, okay, well, if we look at the carbon intensity of the grid, can we process those tasks on a day where we're using more renewables on the grid? And so therefore, rather than burning fossil fuels to run these tasks, can we use renewables instead? Now, that's a very interesting new school of thinking. To be honest, I'm not sure how relevant it is to the average WordPress theme developer, perhaps. But it may be more relevant to plugin developers or agencies who are perhaps hosting or performing a lot of these kinds of tasks for customers, clients. And so I would recommend, if people are interested in learning more about that, then have a look at the Green Software Foundation. They actually, I'm not sure, Matt, when we're going to get this podcast out, but I think 6th to the 17th of June, there is like a global Green Software Foundation festival happening. Nice. With events all across the world that people can go into for free. Nice. And learn more about this topic.
I like that concept of like only using these cycles of a compute to off the renewed energy, right? The stuff that might be solar or wind or stored anyway. That's really cool. I'd imagine that's pretty high level. That's like somebody like an Amazon or a Google could probably achieve that kind of thing. It would be awesome if you think back to the days of being a little kid where you have like the crank flashlight where you could like crank your flashlight. Like this is every day I got to wake up and crank my WordPress site. I do it, right? Like if I could get a discount and save the world, I would do that too. Like that's really cool.
I love that.
And I think that, yeah, I mean, that's all fantastic stuff. I know this is a bit of a grenade, tossing a grenade to you, but is there a WordPress host that you recommend, or do you kind of stay away from recommending WordPress hosts that do these things efficiently?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think a lot of the big players, the global big players, have a bit of catching up to do on this. In the UK, I would definitely recommend Crystal Hosting, Crystal with a KRYSTAL. They run all of their hosting on renewables. But not only that, they've also got good internal sustainability policies. Like, you can tell that sustainability and climate change is something that they think about throughout their business, not just in their marketing, which is why I have, no hesitation to recommend them. They do managed WordPress hosting. They do like VPS type stuff, or, basic shared hosting packages. And I've used all of them. Their support's good. So
cool.
But in America, I'm not sure who I would suggest. Maybe Koalo, I think, if they're in the US as well. They come up time and time again. I think they might have a US presence.
Listen, I totally understand if you don't want to make a commitment to a U.S.-based WordPress host. It's a very political answer, and you one day will run for office. Let's talk about the decoupling. This is something that I'm not well versed in. I've obviously had folks on the show talk about this before, but like headless WordPress, decoupling WordPress from the back end to the front end. Is any of this? Have you seen any of that sort of technology that I hate to say the word trend, but have you seen any of that trend be better for focusing on sustainability, or are we just like replacing one compute load for it?
Yeah, I think I've got to be honest. The headless stuff is stuff I'm aware of. I understand the concept. I've never actually developed in that way myself. My understanding is so that you're not generally producing static sites off the back of that. You're producing very JavaScript heavy sites. And yeah, so I've not yet seen much in the way of evidence that tells me that is significantly better for sustainability. It's kind of, it's another way of doing things. You can do it well, you can do it badly. It's a tool that can be wielded, well or not. It's the static generation of static sites where that becomes really interesting for sustainability.
I should have asked this in the first half of the show, but is this focus of yours, is this the preferred, niche or vertical that you excel with for your freelance stuff? Like, is this how you're finding most of your clients and your work, because you have a passion to focus on sustainability for web technologies? Is that your have you cornered the market, basically, is what I'm getting at? Because you're the first one I've come across, freelancer, that has really had this heavy focus on this. And I would say that anyone in the industry who's like, we need to focus on this too, Hannah Smith is the one that we go to.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. It's really funny, but if you go to my website, I don't talk about it much. The way I get my clients is by being a good freelancer. It's by providing a service where I communicate to people, where I have their best interest at heart, where I turn up. That's an important one. Freelancers sometimes forget to do that. And where I
send an email,
tell them what's going on. I tend to do those things, and I think I probably get the majority of my clients through that reputation, because I've been doing this now for 7 years. So, and I'm female, so there's not many females there as well on top of that. But I think where I do get a lot of inquiries from is because I will go and talk about this topic at any community group, or I'm very happy to come on podcasts and raise awareness at it and talk at conferences. And I think that is also a way that I'm gathering a lot of work too. But yeah, if my portfolio could be 100% sustainable web stuff, yes, please. Yeah. That would be cool. Yeah, it's close to it. It's not quite 100% yet.
Let's give the listeners, the freelancers that are out there, one of your best pieces of advice for showing up. Like, what does that mean to you, and what have you seen freelancers not doing that they have to fix? For me, again, redoing my bathrooms, these contractors, you don't hear from them for like 2 weeks, and you're like, wait, what's happening here, people? Like, I got this empty bathroom. Where are you? Is that what you're looking at when you see other freelancers, or is there something else?
I think that good communication is what will set any freelancer apart. You do obviously need a certain level of technical skill and a certain level of technical knowledge, so let's not overlook that. But when you get to a certain level where most stuff you're comfortable with, what sets you apart is the communication. Is saying to the client, right, I've got you booked in for next Wednesday in the morning, and either you turn up at that time or you tell them way in advance, hey, I'm really sorry, something's come up and it's going to be next Friday instead. But that's something I just try and minimize as much as possible, is shifting the time around that I say I'll turn up for a client. I think that drives people nuts. I know I'm renovating my own house it drives me nuts when builders, just don't turn up, or sorry, 2 hours before they're due to come, sorry, can't come.
Yeah.
So I think, for any freelancer, go and renovate a house, see how it feels, and then don't be like that.
Yes, that's 100%. That's 100% it.
And actually, I just, on top of that, because I was having a chat with a friend of mine earlier this week on this topic, and freelancers, you must bill and expect to bill your client for communicating with them. It's part of your job to tell them what's going on, what your updates are, when you're going to work. And that is okay to include that within as reasonable hours for doing your job. And I think maybe a lot of freelancers don't think they can bill for that time and then don't. And then it becomes, because you've got pressures from elsewhere, they don't do it. So if it helps bill for that time, it makes you more likely for you to do it, because that's what clients want and they value.
I remember when I started my agency, I was just building for the, design development. And then like 6 months into it, I'm like, man, I'm doing a lot of project management stuff here. Like this is a lot more than I thought. And then I was like, oh, I guess I should start billing for this. And then I did the foolish thing of like line iteming project management. And I was like, oh boy, I started getting into those conversations like, well, how many hours does it take you to manage? I'm like, oh boy, I learned that lesson real quick, and now it's just baked it was just baked into the project fee. Like you don't even see it anymore. But yeah, those things can creep up on you, especially if you don't think, that you should be billing for it, like the communication time, like the freelancing time, or like the project management time. It doesn't come immediately. So if this is you listening to it right now and you're like, boy, I should be charging for communications, just think back what your average communication time is for a customer, the last, half a dozen customers you've worked with, and maybe start with that. Say, this is what I've spent 12 hours communicating, emails, Basecamp, Slacks, all this stuff, and build in 12 hours into your next project when you bid it, and see how it works. I bet you'll still land the deal. I bet you'll still land the project.
I kind of go for about a third of my time. It's maybe quite heavy, but a lot of the clients that I'm working with need to collaborate on what they're asking for as well. Yeah. Very few of my clients ever go, I want X. Right. And what X is makes perfect sense. Very rarely does. It's like, okay, have you thought about mobile? Have you thought about this? What about this? What about this circumstance? We could do it this way instead. And that's expertise that I'm giving to the client. And, they value that. And that's my service. Yeah. And hopefully everybody else's service too. That we're all valuing those communication skills.
I'm going to bring another bathroom remodeling analogy back in. But I was talking, that we ran into the situation where, I don't know, we thought a certain size tub could fit, and then and it couldn't. It ended up that we could, but in the moment when the contractor was like, this isn't going to fit, I was like, oh my God, I have to go find a whole nother tub. And he's just like, yeah, you just order it on Amazon. What? Like, I have to research. I have to read reviews. Like, I have to do all this stuff, man. Like, I don't just go click and buy and then I'm done. So there's tons of like value in having knowledge that you can share with a customer, because there will be customers like me that tell me the best way to do this. Tell me the best stuff that we can get to put this project together. I want to know, and I'll pay for it. It's very valuable, and I think a lot of freelancers overlook that.
I think they definitely do. I think I'm at risk of doing that. And then suddenly I sort of have a little moment talking to the client and they're like, oh, that's so helpful. I hadn't realized. And I'm like, oh, this is just implied knowledge to me now. But it's not to everybody else.
Right.
Sure.
Right. Hannah Smith, everyone. You can go to her website, opcan.co.uk, opcan.co.uk. Hannah, anywhere else you want to send folks to say thanks?
If you're interested in we try that again. If you're interested in climate and sustainability, I would really highly recommend you come and join us in the climateaction.tech community. The Slack community is full of wonderful people. If you have questions or you want to be around like-minded people, I would, come and join us there. We need lots of people, lots of different voices from different different disciplines to come and join in the conversation.
And the website for that one more time is?
climateaction.tech.
Awesome stuff. Everyone else is mattreport.com, mattreport.com/subscribe to join the mailing list. #1 way to stay connected. And we'll see you in the next episode.